Okay. Yeah, we can go ahead and begin if this is everybody. I just don't want people who think it's going to start at 11:30 and show up at 11:29 to miss out.
I was pretty heavy-handed in my messaging to the group that everyone should arrive by 2:15. So I think we're all here. Um, let me introduce you to us and us to you. So this is Garden Sangha. We're just a group of people. We meet in New York City on Sunday afternoons, and usually what we do is we meet outside at a garden uh, somewhere around the city, and we sit for 45 minutes. And everybody has a different practice. People are from different traditions. We don't have a teacher. We don't do any donations. We just sit, and then afterwards we go and get some coffee and get some community. It's been said that sangha is some significant portion of the spiritual life. So, um, and I will tell our group and anyone else who's watching this recording from our group in the future. First, let me mention that Leigh has a website. It is leighb.com, leighb.com. And before I forget, I just do want to say that Leigh has given a lot of time over the years and decades to teaching. Um, and he's given us his afternoon very generously. And so just incredibly grateful, Leigh, for you giving us time. And if anyone wants to give Don a show generosity, you can do that through his website. You can also find his books through his website, Right Concentration, which is most relevant to what we'll be talking about today. And I know Leigh has also written on the gradual training and on dependent origination and emptiness. And I think you have a new book too, you mentioned, on the early suttas. You can feel free to mention that if you want to. And anything else that I might have missed, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Leigh.
Okay. So the one question I have before we start is, how long are we going for? Are we going to be here for 3 or 4 hours, or is this a?
We'll leave it up to you. We figured it's something like an hour where you talk for a half an hour, or however long you need to get across what you want to get across, and leave some
Yeah.
time for to field questions from the people.
Okay. Right. So I'll sort of, you know, I have talks that can go for an hour and a half. I have talks that can go for 5 minutes. So just getting an idea of which version should I use here. So, and for some reason, yeah. Okay, got it. Um, so Hanasara Bhikkhu says that his teacher told him he should not try and teach the Dhamma to anyone who hasn't been meditating recently. So I thought to start off, we'll do a very quick, like 3 minute meditation just to get yourself settled. Any form of meditation you want. Okay. So I rang a bell, but obviously, since no one moved, it didn't come across. Yeah, I got a new computer. I had the old one set up so nicely so that I could ring a bell and people could hear it and it filtered and yeah. Oh well. So the jhanas. The jhanas are 8 altered states of consciousness that are brought on by concentration, and each one yields more concentration than the previous one. So this allows you to stair step your way to deeper and deeper levels of concentration. Concentration is the usual translation of the Pali word samadhi. It's not bad, but it does have that furrowed brow type thing. I actually prefer indistractability because that's really what we're after. Not quite all of the concentration bits that come with baggage for that word, but just the ability to not become distracted. As I say, there are 8 of these states. Actually, in the suttas, the Buddhist discourses, there are 4 jhanas and 4 immaterial states. But there are suttas where, it becomes a sequence of 8 states that you move through one after the other. And so calling them the 8 jhanas is just a nice shorthand way, although that doesn't appear until much later in the early Buddhist literature. So what's the purpose of getting so concentrated? Well, the Buddha taught basically sila, samadhi, panya, morality, concentration, wisdom. We could rephrase that as clean up your act, learn to concentrate your mind, use your concentrated mind to examine reality and gain a deeper understanding of how the world really works, particularly the world in here. Okay? So it's the middle part of that 3 of morality, concentration, and wisdom. I'm assuming everybody's already keeping the 5 precepts. I mean, yeah, if you're going to make progress on the spiritual path, it's pretty much required. They basically don't cause harm. Don't cause harm to anyone else and don't cause harm to yourself. The 5th one being more for yourself. Although if you're drunk, who knows how much other harm you'll cause. And then you're leading a life as harmless as possible. And then you need to get your mind concentrated and investigate reality. And the jhanas are what the Buddha referred to as right concentration in the Eightfold Path. There are multiple descriptions of the Eightfold Path that point out that right concentration is the first 4 jhanas. The first 4 seem to be sufficient. If you can get skilled in them, you probably have got sufficient indistractability for your insight practice to go much more effectively. If you can do the others, you'll just get even more deeply concentrated, but they seem to be optional. The way to get to these jhanas, remember I said they arise due to concentration, so you're going to need to generate some baseline of concentration, a baseline indistractability. This goes by the name of access concentration. It's called that, not in the suttas, only in the commentaries, but it's a good phrase. It's enough concentration to give you access to the jhanas. Normally, when you sit down to meditate, let's say you're following your breath, you put your attention on your breathing, and then you get distracted. If you get distracted, relax and come back. Actually, it can be helpful to label the distraction. Planning, worrying, arguing with boss, whatever comes to mind. The first word is always correct. and then relax and bring your attention back. The labeling helps in that, one, it helps you disidentify with the thought stream, and two, you begin to get a sense of where your mind tends to go when you get distracted. Does it go mostly to the past or mostly to the future? Notice how infrequently we get distracted into the present. Isn't that weird, considering that the present is all we have? We are weird creatures. Okay, so you sit down, you put your attention on your meditation object, the metta, body scan, the breath, whatever. You get distracted, label, relax, come back. If you do that long enough, you will stop getting distracted. Now, long enough, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 4 days on retreat. That's actually fairly typical. Um, and you go on retreat and all that stuff comes up that's left over from your life back in the big city. And then eventually it calms down. And that's the point at which you can start learning the jhanas, because you'll be getting to access concentration during a sitting before it gets to the end of the sitting, before you get too tired. When you get to access concentration, we could define it as being fully with the object of meditation, such that if there are thoughts, they're wispy and in the background and do not pull you away. For example, if you're working with the breath, you know each in-breath, you know each out-breath. And thoughts that come up are probably more like, oh, this is good. This feels real settled. Is this what he was talking about? How long have I been here? As opposed to, yeah, when I get to Hawaii, the first thing I'm going to do is, or whatever. For most people, it takes a while to get to access concentration. And then for most people, you need to stay at access concentration for some amount of time and let the concentration really solidify, really get stable. Once you're at access concentration, I tell students on retreat, stay there for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. Now, I know that's really indefinite, but once you're at access concentration, your sense of time is not particularly accurate. So really what I'm saying is stay there for a while, let the concentration build. Okay, so you've gotten distracted, you've stopped getting distracted. Now you've been with not getting distracted for a while. If you want to enter the first jhana, what I teach is drop the access method, the breath, the metta, the body scan, whatever you are doing, and put your full attention on a pleasant sensation. Now you might be wondering, what pleasant sensation? Well, hopefully, if you put a fake smile on your face when you sit down to meditate, by the time you get to access concentration, it'll be a genuine smile. You'll have to keep putting it back on your face because it'll keep falling off. Okay. So if you smile when you meditate, then you only have to move your attention 1 inch to the pleasantness of the act of smiling. And then focus on the pleasantness of the pleasant sensation. Now, I know too many people in this culture have been told, smile whether you feel like it or not. And now some old white guy's telling you, smile whether you feel like it or not. Okay, if you don't feel like smiling, don't smile. But you'll need to find some other pleasant sensation. The smile works really well, but it only works for 20, 25% of the students I work with. The most common is the hands. That's upside down. I mean, a sort of warm, tingly glow in the hands. It's pleasant. It's not strongly pleasant. But if somebody asks you, is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, you would say, it's pleasant. That's good enough. Drop the attention on the breath or metta or whatever, and focus on the pleasantness of the pleasant sensation. By that, I mean not where it is or how long it's been there or whether it's increasing or decreasing or how strong it is, just the fact that it's pleasant, and enjoy it. Hands are the most common. Other possibilities are third eye, top of the head, top of the shoulders, soles of the feet, you name a body part. I've had a student find pleasant physical sensations there they could focus on. So You got to access, you weren't getting distracted, you stayed there for a while, and then you drop the attention on the object that got you to access and focus on a pleasant sensation. Now comes the really difficult part. Do nothing else. That's it. Just enjoy the pleasantness of the pleasant sensation. The problem is you want something to happen, and it will as long as you do nothing else. Eventually, the intensity level of the pleasure will increase slightly, which is pleasant, which adds a little more pleasantness. And the fact that it added a little more pleasantness, that brings the pleasantness up some more, which adds, okay, you get the picture. We're setting up a positive feedback loop. Positive feedback loop, like if this is a microphone and I hold it up to the speaker, it makes that horrible sound. You don't have to do anything. You just hold the microphone up to the speaker. The ambient noise in the room goes into the microphone, goes through the amplifier, comes out louder, goes right back into the microphone, gets amplified some more, comes out louder. Well, we're trying to set up a positive feedback loop, not of noise, but of pleasure. So you're going to need a real steady mind to get that. If you sit down, you can't follow your breath. There's no way you're going to follow a subject, an object of meditation, a very pleasant, a very minor pleasant sensation strong enough without to get distracted. So you got to work your way up. And as I say, it will increase, but it's not going to increase right away. It may take several minutes. It may take 5 minutes before it does anything. Most common problem is it starts increasing and you get all excited. Oh, it's increasing, which of course makes it go away. Or it starts increasing. Oh, it's increasing. And I'm going to help it. And it goes away. Right? Or you start complaining. He said it was going to increase and it's not increasing. That prevents it from increasing. You just have to do nothing. You have to be a human being as opposed to a human doing. Right? You just be someone enjoying the pleasantness. If you can do that without interrupting it, it will increase until it erupts into, well, a geyser of piti and sukha. Piti could be translated as, well, I've seen rapture, euphoria, ecstasy, delight. My favorite translation is glee. And sukha is the opposite of dukkha, happiness, joy. When the first jhana comes on, it's pretty obvious an altered state of consciousness. This is different from where you were before. And your mind will immediately focus on the piti sukha experience. You may not be able to tell, oh, this is piti and this is sukha. The piti has more of a physical component, and the sukha is an emotion, right? But when it arises, it's there and you'll know it. And just stay with it. Now, some of the problems that can arise are jumping too soon, right? You're following your breath. You followed 6, 8, 10 breaths in a row. This must be good enough. Where's the pleasant sensation? Or a pleasant sensation starts to arise. You're not really that concentrated, but you jump onto the pleasant sensation because it's there. You got to be patient and let the concentration get strong enough to stay with the pleasant sensation. The breath comes and goes. There's a lot going on. Much easier to stay focused on it. Whereas the pleasant sensation is just sitting there being mildly pleasant. We tend to notice change. If you stare without moving your eyes at something, then something will just fade out because nothing's changing. Same thing with a pleasant sensation. If it's not changing, it's really hard to keep your attention on it. So let the access concentration arise and build before you jump on the pleasant sensation. Now, of course, the opposite problem is there as well. You stay so long waiting for the concentration to get perfect that you reach the point of diminishing returns, your body starts complaining, and yeah, now it's not going to happen either. So as usual, middle way. Not too long, not too soon. Um, Other things that can happen, I mean, any of the five hindrances can arise, some aversion, uh, some sloth and torpor. If your concentration is strong, but your energy is weak, that's called sleepiness. If your energy is strong and your concentration is weak, that's called restlessness. Yeah. So those can arise. Doubt. You're trying to do this and it's not working. Well, it's really hard. Um, Most people need to go on a 10-day or longer retreat to learn to get to the first jhana. Okay? But you've got the instructions now. There, it's laid out in the book, and it's doable given the right circumstances. Sometimes the first jhana comes on very intensely. If it's really intense, you don't have to stay there very long. I'm usually in the first jhana around 10 seconds because I've been doing it now for 37 years. So, I know where the volume control is and I can turn it all the way up. That's enough. And then I move on to the second. So, when you've had enough of the first jhana, either you've been there 5 or 10 minutes, beyond that for the first jhana is not useful, or it's just too intense and it can be so pleasant it's not pleasant. Uh, then to move on to the second, take a deep breath, really let the energy out on the exhale, and focus on the emotional sense of joy or happiness. Focus on the sukha and let the piti decrease. You're basically doing a foreground background shift. If this is a piti in the first jhana, the sukha is kind of hidden away, but it's there. You take the deep breath and they both decrease, but the piti decreases more. Now you can focus on the sukha, the joy, the happiness. And now you're focused not on a physical experience, but on an emotional experience. And you're just happy for no reason other than, yeah, we have the neurological pathway already built in our brains. Normally, we get happy when there's an external trigger, right? Somebody says, "Oh, you did such a great job with that." And you get all happy. It was an external trigger. But they didn't put the happiness in there, they just triggered that neurological pathway. All of our experiences are neurological pathways, right? You're triggering the happiness neurological pathway with your concentration. Pretty cool. You don't have to find it out there. It's in there. All you got to do is turn it on. And so you stay focused on the happiness. Things have calmed down. The PT has not gone away. There's still some background physical motion. In the first jhana, I find I'm vibrating. Some people twitch. Some people get a rush of heat like a hot flash. Some people get all of that. Usually not, usually one of those. But by the second jhana, the physical is calmed down. I find in second jhana, I'm rocking a little bit or maybe swaying, something like that, very slowly. And I'm just happy. The third jhana, so the way to move from first to second is take a deep breath and let the energy out. And letting the energy out should calm the PT enough that it uncovers the sukha, calms the physical agitation, and joy, happiness is now present and you can focus on it. When you want to move to the third, take another deep breath and let the energy out. Excuse me. This time, it should take the PT completely away. And you should find yourself in a state of, well, contentment, of wishlessness, of satisfaction. Satisfaction so complete that if Mick Jagger had been practicing third jhana, he couldn't sing that song. Right? You're there. You have arrived. You're satisfied. And it's very still. With the PT gone, there's no sense of movement. It's just contentment. And you're just contented. The energy level is coming down. In the first, it's pretty agitated. In the second, it's not quite calm, a little bit background. In the third, it's very still. But it's pleasant. it's very nice to be content, to be in a wishless state. I find in the third jhana, I got a wispy smile. First jhana, I got a big grin. You can see my teeth. Second jhana, I got a big grin, no teeth. Third jhana, I got, yeah, a Buddha smile, like you see on the Buddha statues. By the way, that Buddha smile is there for teaching purposes to say smile when you meditate. It makes it easier to get to the jhana. So in third jhana, you got this wispy, pleasant smile on your face. If you want to move to the fourth jhana, guess what? Take another deep breath, let the energy out. And as you're letting the energy out, let go of any pleasure you're experiencing. I can just relax all the muscles in my face. That smile goes away. And I find there's a sense of sinking down, drifting down, uh, like jumping into a swimming pool and drifting down to the bottom. It's not a sudden fall, it's a more drifting down. Ayakema, my teacher, said that third jhana was like being in the mouth of a well, and fourth jhana is letting go and drifting down to the bottom of the well. It's not a free fall. It's definitely a sense of drifting down. And it stabilizes at a place of quiet stillness, which is your object for the fourth jhana. The fourth jhana is usually called the jhana of equanimity, but if I tell you focus on equanimity, exactly what is that? How do I focus on it? Yeah. So I tell you focus on quiet stillness. If you can focus on quiet stillness and you have arrived at the fourth jhana, you will be focused on equanimity. And you're just sitting there in an equanimous state. It's not pleasant. It's not unpleasant. It's very neutral, emotionally neutral, and hopefully physically neutral as well. For each of the jhanas after the first one, you could stay as long as you wanted in it. I tell people they should learn to stay in them for 10 to 15 minutes when they're learning them. As you get the first four, well in hand, maybe you're staying 5 minutes, 3 minutes, changing it up. Sometimes 10 seconds for me in the first, 5 minutes in the second, 2 minutes in the third, 3 minutes in the fourth. Next time, 10 in the first, 3 in the second, 5 in the third, 3 in the fourth. Maybe others, I spend a lot of time in the fourth after 2 and 3 are short. So why bother doing this? Because getting as far as a good fourth jhana gives you a mind that's concentrated, clear, sharp, bright, malleable, wieldy, and given to imperturbability so that you can direct and incline your mind to knowing and seeing. One can understand thus, this is my body, made of material form, built out of the four elements, fed on rice and gruel, originating from mother and father, impermanent, subject to rubbing and pressing, to dissolution and dispersion. And this is my consciousness, bound up and supported by my body. Basically, the purpose of the jhanas is to give you the concentration to do your insight practice most effectively. And what sort of insight practice? Well, how about investigating mind and body? When we think about the Satipatthana Sutta, I'm assuming you're maybe familiar with the sutta, the Discourse on Mindfulness. The first, the first foundation is body. The second one is Vedana, your initial reaction to sensory input, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. The third is your mind state. And the fourth is, well, some of the Buddhist teachings and your relationships with them. So, yeah, you've got a mind now that can practice the four foundations of mindfulness much more effectively because it's really concentrated. And this is what the purpose of the jhanas is. I'm going to fix my computer right quick so that it doesn't drop out again. Okay. When you get as far as the fourth jhana, actually, even when you get to the first jhana, your normal ego functioning has been quieted. I'm assuming you're all aware that you have to think yourself up, you have to emote yourself up. There's not some little guy sitting behind your eyeballs looking out, pulling the levers to make your arm go up. Yeah, we make this up in our minds. And to get to these jhanic states, you've basically got to get your ego to go sit in the corner, be quiet, we'll get back to you. So that now, when you come out of them, you're looking at the world from a less egocentric perspective. Normally, when we look at the world, it's in terms of can I eat that or will that eat me? Well, we get a little more sophisticated these days, but it's is this something I want to get or is this something I need to push away? And notice I is right there in the middle of it all. Okay, so when we look at the world, we've got ego colored glasses on. We get a much better and more accurate view of the world when we can look at the world from a less egocentric perspective. And having the indistractability that the jhanas generate will make it even more effective. You will not get distracted for an even longer period of time. Okay? So this is what the jhanas are about, to give you that less egocentric, less distractible mind state for examining reality. In the Tibetan tradition, they talk about Manjushri, who's the bodhisattva of wisdom, is usually depicted as having a sword in his hand, which he uses to cut the bonds of ignorance. Jhana practice is simply sharpening Manjushri's sword. You haven't cut any bonds of ignorance yet. You got to go wield the sword. That's your insight practice. But you don't want to just sharpen, just do jhana practice, because eventually you got no sword and you didn't cut any bonds of ignorance. So the jhanas are essentially a warm-up exercise for your insight practice. So I mentioned there were 8 of these jhanas. They're the 4 immaterial states, and they are quite unlike the 4 jhanas. Uh, we've all experienced rapture, glee in our lives, happiness, contentment, and quiet stillness. So it's not extraordinary experiences, but these next immaterial states are, well, rather different. The first of them goes by the name of limitless space, the experience of limitless space. Um, Basically, you get there from the fourth jhana. Most people find in the fourth jhana they're sort of slumped over. It's such a restful place that, yeah, you can't be bothered to sit upright. So if you want to get to the fifth, you got to get your energy back up. And then you have to find something you can expand without limit. What Ayakema told me was get in touch with the boundaries of my being and expand them to fill the room, and then the building, and then the retreat center, and then the neighborhood, and then out to the horizon and just keep going. If you can find something you can expand without limit, imaginatively, just stay focused on the outer edges of the expansion. If you do that well enough, without getting distracted, eventually a vast space opens up in front of you. It's quite obvious this is different. Um, this is the fifth jhana, a place of limitless space. It's often called a base of infinite consciousness. But they didn't have zero at the time of the Buddha, so I don't think they had infinity. So limitless or boundless space. Uh, so the base of infinite space, more accurately, would be the experience of limitless space. Um, the word that's translated as space, and I'm translating experience, is the same as the eye and its object, the ear and its sound, ayatana. In Pali, they have one word for the sense organ and its object. Okay, and so it's that word that is being used. So the sense organ of your mind and its object of limitless space. Yeah, let's just call it the experience of limitless space. It's a big space, and it's just like, wow, where did that come from? It's probably before you. It might be off-white or light gray. It may or may not have a horizon line. If it's really strong, it'll be below you, behind you. It could be black, like outer space, but no stars or anything. There's nothing in the space. It's just a big space. That's the fifth jhana. Okay. So you stay there for a while. The sixth one is the experience of limitless consciousness. And to get there, what you need to do is shift your attention from the space to your consciousness of the space. Become aware of your awareness of the space. Become conscious of your consciousness. It's sort of a turning back, and you become aware that your mind has to be as big as that space for you to know how big that space is. All right. And so your mind is already that big. You don't have to do anything to it. You just got to become aware of the fact that your mind has gotten that big, that your consciousness has gotten that big. In the fifth jhana, the one of space, there is a tiny sense of observer and a vast space before them. You may not notice the observer the first multiple times you're there, but in the sixth jhana, the observer and the consciousness are the same. It's my consciousness that is without limit. Yeah, I know these sound weird. They're just experiences that we're putting a label on, and this is the most accurate sounding label. They're just mind states, though. The seventh jhana is no thingness, the experience of no thingness. To get there, the consciousness, what is it conscious of? Well, the sense of space is long gone. There's nothing there. Put your attention on the nothingness, the no thingness. What I find when I do that is there's like a ball of nothingness right in front of me, maybe volleyball size. And it stabilizes. I look at the edge and there's nothing there and there's nothing there. Now I got a beach ball size nothingness. Okay, they get that stable. Look over here, is nothing, nothing over there. It's getting bigger. And it continues to get bigger, but it doesn't get limitless because there's nothing there. It's just there's nothing there. The nothingness, well, it's like look around the room you're in. I can see a painting on the wall, a lamp, chairs, people, computers, big screen. Yeah. Suppose you were to go out and go to the toilet, and when you came back, everything had been taken out of the room. You go, there's nothing in here. It's that kind of nothing. Or you take a cookie jar, take the top off, no cookies, nothing in the cookie jar, no thingness. Most people describe it as dark, like black, uh, deep purple, dark blue, something like that. And there's simply nothing there. Some people, though, see, well, static. Remember on the old TV when you turned it to where there wasn't a channel, you got black and white static? Can you imagine black and black static? Yeah, that's what people see. There's nothing there, but there's some sort of staticky feeling. I've never seen this, but I have talked to a lot of people that that's what they get for the seventh jhana. And then for the eighth jhana, it's called the experience of neither perception nor non-perception. Perception is the Pali word sanya, which we translate as perception, but I would prefer to translate it as conceptualization. For example, can you see the flowers in the bird? Is that clear? You see the, can you see some flowers? Yeah, okay. No flowers, just colored shapes. The bird and the flowers are in your mind. You made them up. What do you actually see? You see pixels on a screen, right? There's no bird or flowers, no person, no eyeglasses, no beard. Just pixels on a screen. But you take the colored shapes, you look them up in your database of potential objects, and you go, oh, flowers, bird, person, eyeglasses. That's sanya. That's the word we usually translate as perception. And so the eighth jhana is, well, where there's neither perception nor non-perception. I don't guess that helped a lot. It's a difficult state to describe. It's a state that has no characteristics by which you can describe it, yet you know you're in a state that has no characteristics by which you can describe it. That probably didn't help either. Okay, get good at seventh jhana. Get really good at seventh jhana. It's then fairly easy to find the eighth jhana by letting the big nothingness collapse down into something in front of your face and see if your mind went into a state you can't describe, but you can stay there. Then you probably hit eighth jhana. Now, the purpose of these higher jhanas is to generate a mind that's even more concentrated, clearer, sharper, brighter, more malleable, more wieldy, more given to imperturbability. It should help out your insight practice for a longer period of time before you start becoming distracted again. And it pushes the ego even further away. When you're learning the jhanas, it's good to learn them like scales. You learn 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1. Something like that. I mean, that's not the first sitting. It maybe is just 1, 2, 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1, something like that as you learn. Uh, and you just get some skill in it. And if you're concentrated enough, you know what the trick is that you do. You know, a reliable, pleasant sensation that you can focus on, and what it's like to focus on it, and how it turns into the jhana. You know how much concentration you have to have before you start focusing on the pleasant sensation. So that's the jhanas. They are a warm-up exercise for insight practice. They're a pretty nice place to hang out. I mean, glee, happiness, contentment, quiet stillness. Yeah, very pleasant mind states. Long term, they probably will move your emotional set point more towards positive end. Modern neuroscience says whatever you do on a regular basis becomes more your default mind state. So if you're regularly hanging out in these positive mind states, it'll probably make you happier. But that's probably a 5 or 10-year project. So I think that was about half an hour. Questions, comments. You're going to have to come up and talk directly at me, I guess.
Leigh, I'm going to try and mute this screen and
Okay.
unmute on my laptop so I can pass it around to people
Oh,
to make it a little easier.
yeah.
And we'll just prepare ourselves for disappointment because I don't think this is going to work, but we'll try.
Okay. If you're passing around your laptop, set it for speaker view. That way I
Okay.
can see the person that is speaking to me as opposed to, yeah. That way I think we can talk back and forth more easily. And then turn on the camera on that laptop as well. Yeah, yeah, it's on. Right. Okay, good.
Okay, check, check.
Yep,
Little feedback.
that's good.
I think maybe we'll just go up there.
Oops. Now I can't hear you. It got muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, we'll just come up here.
Okay.
Well, since I'm up here, let me lead off. I have two questions. So you say that the purpose of the jhanas is to get a jhanically concentrated mind to do your insight practice. I'm curious uh, how much um, how much is jhana practice itself in insight practice? How much is there insight to be gained from doing the jhanas? And then also you mentioned this idea of doing the jhanas can increase your emotional set point. In your experience, your personal experience and with your students, what have you seen in the way of psychological benefits to doing the jhanas?
Right. So there are some insights that do come with the jhanas. When you are learning the jhanas, probably the first one is if you're craving for the jhana, you can't have it. Craving brings to dukkha. The number one distraction that people run into is I want the jhana. Then you're wanting the jhana is going to prevent you from getting it. You have to abandon the five hindrances to get to the jhanas. Wanting the jhana, that's the first hindrance, right? Desire. So yeah, that's gonna be your first insight that craving causes dukkha. But there are others. I mentioned that we already have the happiness in there, and it's just external things are triggering that neurological pathway. Once you experience the second jhana and you realize that you can trigger it yourself, there's insight into, oh, I don't have to go outside and find sources of happiness. It is possible to have some happiness just by sitting down and meditating, and so that's an insight. But I won't tell you the other insights. You learn them, and you'll learn them for yourself. The psychological thing, yeah, you move your emotional set point from negative mind states towards more positive mind states. As I say, it's a long-term project, so I don't really see in the students in any really measurable way in the course of a 10-day retreat that somebody learns the jhanas and they're happier. I mean, yeah, they're happier because they've been hanging out in happy states, but I don't see their life as happier necessarily. Um, if they come back the next year, maybe they tell me their life is going better. But is it going better because they were hanging out in the jhanas, or is it going better because of the insights they got from their insight practice? I mean, the insights basically give you insight into how the world works, so you stop doing some of the stupid things that bring you misery. So is is the happiness they bring back a year later happiness due to the jhanas or the insights? I'm going to bet mostly on the insights. Now, I'm guessing if you do 5, 10 years of jhanas, you're going to get stuff there, but it's going to be subtle. I do have one experience I can relate. I used to meditate for science on a fairly regular basis, maybe a couple of times a year. And I showed up for these guys that wanted to, that I had meditated for science before. They were running EEG, with a bonnet on my head to see what. And they said, we don't really want to do the jhanas this time. What we want to do is see if we can generate a biofeedback machine for access concentration. We want to see if we can detect when you get to access concentration. And we think we've wired the machine up. We're going to be looking for, I guess, increase in alpha from the center of your brain, basically your nucleus accumbens lighting up, the reward center in your brain. And we've tested this on other people. We think we've got everything set up right. And I discussed it with them. I said, okay, So what you want it to do is to beat quietly, not silently, quietly in the background if the reward center hasn't reached the threshold you're looking for. They said, yeah, we'll set it, we'll stop beeping when it gets to 10. If you can make it go to 10 when you get to access, then that'll be a signal. And I said also, since muscle tension messes things up, if there's muscle tension, make it beep. And so my job is to make it stop beeping, basically. Okay, get concentrated enough that the reward center gets activated as high as 10 without getting muscle tension. So first jhana is useless because of the muscle tension that always comes with the PT. You can't get a useful reading out of that. But, I'll go through it, and then when I get past it into second, then you get valid readings again. So I sit down, and I'm just in rest, and it's beeping. And then I start meditating, and I get to access concentration, and it's still beeping. And I get good access concentration, and it's still beeping. And I go into the first jhana, and yeah, it beeps like crazy because of the muscle tension. And I hit the second jhana. Oh, wait, I missed. This was the second run. The first run, they put it on, they say, okay, just relax, and it doesn't beep. I was already at 10. They had been testing it. Most people, when they sit down to meditate, to do nothing, it's 5. Their nucleus accumbens at 5. Mine was already greater than 10 when I sat down. This would mean that my resting state is a more rewarding state in terms of activity in my nucleus accumbens than the average person's. So they upped it to 20. And so now when I sat down, I'm at 10 and it's beeping. And then I move through. And once I hit second jhana, it stops beeping. I run it all the way up, I think, to 28 at that point. I move to third jhana. It comes down to like 18. So it starts beeping again. It's still way above the 10. Uh, and when I move to fourth jhana, it comes down to about 15. So it's still beeping. Go back to third, it's still beeping. Go back to second, stops beeping. I'm again high 20s. I intentionally distract myself. I start thinking about a fantasy, and yeah, it starts beeping. And I come back in, then I drop down to second jhana, and it's beeping. I mean, to access concentration, it's beeping, and then come out. So they had accidentally generated a second jhana detector. Okay, they rewired the machine to check for a drop in gamma out of the sides of my head, and that worked. It would beep until I got to access, and then it would stop beeping all the way through the jhanas. Well, it beeped in first, but in second, third, fourth, it didn't beep. Come back to second, distract myself, it beeps. Come back, get in second, drop to access, it's still not beeping, drop out, and it starts beeping again. So it would appear that my baseline reward center activity is higher than the average person's. Now, is this due to decades of jhana practice or just the fact that I had a happy childhood? I don't know. But, test it out. Do jhanas for a while and see if you're happier after 10, 20 years of doing them.
So, yeah, I got it all. Floor is yours. Anyone wants to take? I have a question. Come on up.
Cut, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been on a few 10-day retreats before, and I don't think I've ever gotten all that close to access concentration. I find that what usually happens is, my mind settles down over a few days, and then just like a bunch of difficult, negative emotional stuff from my past shoots up. And
Yeah.
basically every retreat I've done, I'm in that state the whole time, and then I go home. I've gotten a lot of great work done at sort of being with that content and not trying to fix it and just, feeling like crap for 5 days in a row can actually be a useful practice in itself, but it still leaves me with the feeling that there's some work that I could have been doing if I could get more concentrated that isn't getting done. I'm curious if, like, what do you tell students who find themselves in this place?
So at the start of every retreat, I give 2 warnings. The first warning is if you have expectations of experiencing the jhanas, you're in trouble. Expectations are the worst thing you can bring on a retreat, and especially a jhana retreat. So yeah, dump your expectations. I'll give you instructions. Follow the instructions to the best of your ability. You're in New York. Suppose you want to drive to Chicago, right? And they tell you, drive down this street, and when you get to this one, take a right, and when you get that one, and then you go through the tunnel, and then you end, right? You start looking for Chicago while you're still in New York, you're probably going to run the red light and get T-boned, right? You got to know where you are and what landmark you're looking for when you start doing something else. It's the same with the jhana instructions, rather than focusing on Chicago or the jhana, right? But the other warning is if you have any unresolved psychological issues, they might show up. And my experience is vast majority of people have unresolved psychological issues. Now, they don't always show up, but if there's a fair amount there, it will show up once you get concentrated. You don't even have to get anywhere near the jhanas or even access concentration. Just get concentrated enough, and the energy we've been using to hold that stuff down, well, it's going towards concentration. And these things pop up.
That's
So,
exactly what it is.
yeah. So the work that needs to be done is to deal with the stuff that's popping up. Working on that stuff on a retreat isn't wrong, but it's probably not effective enough. So you're going to have to find other modalities other than meditation to work on that stuff. Meditation's really good for getting it up into clear view, but actually resolving it probably is going to use Western psychological methods better than anything else. So that's what I'm going to recommend. Uh, you know, I know enough psychology. If somebody freaks out, I can get them down off the ceiling, but I can't help them with what it was that freaked them out necessarily, other than to just keep them down off the ceiling until they can go home and see their therapist again. So yeah, consider, and I'm not saying you need a therapist, but consider what comes up, write it down so you've got a clear idea of the issues you need to work on, and then find out a way to work on them when you come back from the retreat.
Oh yeah, I'm doing that.
Yes, good.
So
That's all it's going to take. I don't know how long though.
yeah, no, fair enough. I guess the question that might have been underneath the question I was asking is in your experience having a bunch of stuff like this to work on, is that actually a barrier to developing the kind of concentration necessary to?
Yeah. If once you get settled, distractions come up all the time, yeah, it's not going to work. And this is a really common problem. I mean, it's very, 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 very rare that I teach a retreat and everybody gets to at least one jhana one time. It's happened, I think, 3 times out of 160 something retreats. And all 3 retreats were small and very experienced students. Okay. Or one of them was very long and very experienced students. But yeah, uh, and probably the most common block that people find is, yeah, unresolved stuff from the past coming up that needs to be worked on.
All right, thanks.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Good question.
Leigh, hello.
Hi.
Hey, big fan. I've seen a lot of your stuff on YouTube. Also, thanks, Josh, for setting this up, and Jonathan and Paula for having us. So I don't really practice in this jhana way. I've done Zen, and the school of Zen that I practice with, we just sit there and we don't we don't mess around with any koans or any labeling or anything like that. You just sit there and I guess, I think developed concentration. You sit for long enough, you start to feel good. They don't really call that anything. We just notice that it feels good to sit, feels good to breathe. Maybe that's just samadhi. I don't know if that's first jhana or really what that is. But I found this is a question, I promise. But I found that method a little bit steep, because it's like just sit and don't talk about enlightenment. And so I stumbled across the Dzogchen stuff, which gave me more of a map. So, sort of it starts out with being sort of confused or whatever, and then you have a recognition. And the recognition is noticeable, and it sounds kind of like a little bit of the fifth jhana and maybe a little bit of the second jhana, like softly, like sort of all combined in one sort of experience. But and I know, I don't know how much you know about Dzogchen. I think maybe you've
I've been
about
practicing Dzogchen since 1992.
Okay, well, great. This is perfect. So it started out with the pointing out instructions, and then I'm like, what are they talking about? What are they pointing at? What are they pointing at? And then I finally started to recognize it. So it got to the point where I could go on a walk, or I could be like standing in line at the grocery store or something like that, and what I think is a recognition, when I could recognize this Rigpa thing. But I always fall out of it, and I find that if I'm doing zazen, I'm building concentration, I can kind of hold a recognition for longer, but I fall out of it, and I come back and I fall out, and so I'm sort of in between this recognition and stabilization. And I noticed there's not a lot of like help there. Like if someone can identify this recognition part, but there's still the stabilization thing that has to happen later. So is there like a resource? Like, is there a certain something I should follow at this part where I can, prolong the recognition? Or do I just sound completely confused to you and lost? And do I need to follow a more strict map?
Yeah. So one, I practice Dzogchen, but I don't teach it. So I'm not going to try and teach it. But what I will say is I know what you mean. You recognize it and then you fall out. And what Tsogni Rinpoche, whom I learned it from, said was recognize again and again and again. I find that what works best for me is to practice the jhanas before I step into Rigpa. So when I'm on retreat, I like to do like hour and a half sittings. And so I'll do some metta, like 10 minutes of metta, and then I'll follow my breath to get to access, and then I'll enter the jhanas and probably only go as far as 4. Sometimes I go to 8, and then I'll step out into Rigpa. But yeah, it's more stable than if I just sat down and stepped into Rigpa. But it's still, I fall out and I get back in. I fall out and I get back in. Sometimes it lasts 30 seconds, a minute, but that's rare. It's usually on the order of 10, 15 seconds at the most. Sometimes I step in and I fall out within 2 seconds. This is just how it is. But I find that stepping back into that view, that non-dual view of the universe, is very beneficial, not while I'm in it, but the most important thing is to keep my mindfulness up when I get up from that sitting, because the insights aren't going to come while I'm in the Rigpa state because there's no concepts there. But my mind has gotten out of its usual way of relating to the world. And now, if I'm really mindful when I get up, that's when I'll start getting the insights. I hope that's helpful. That's about all I got about this.
Yeah, I guess maybe what I'm looking for, and maybe I need to be the guy to write the book on it or something. Like I want to know what to do when I'm brushing my teeth. I want to know what to do when I'm washing the dishes. I want to know when I'm putting my shoes on. I think it should really be that practical.
Yeah. what you want to do in all of those circumstances is be mindful. It's really simple. Ram Dass wrote Be Here Now. That's the first non-Christian spiritual book I ever read. And he nailed it in the title. That's all it is. Be here now. When you're brushing your teeth, just pay attention to brushing your teeth. When you're washing the dishes, just pay attention to washing the dishes. There's a sutta I really like in the Sutta Nipata, Book 5. This is number 15, Mogaraja Sutta. Mogaraja asked the Buddha, Venerable Sir, how should one view the world though the king of death cannot see one? That's a kind of a weird question. Like, how should I view the US government so the tax man can't see me? Yeah, it's probably not going to work. But the Buddha says, view the world as empty. That's what your Dzogchen practice is aiming for. Ever mindful. If you can do that and not generate a sense of self, the king of death cannot see you. In other words, that's enlightenment. So, yeah, view the world as empty. See that everything is arising dependent on other things, that nothing has inherent existence, and just be mindful all the time. What we're trying to do is replace what's called the default mode network, which is our distraction network in our brain. It gets activated when there's nothing else to do, right? And if you're following your breath, there's nothing else to do. Oh, let's turn on the distraction network, the default mode network. We're trying to replace that default with a new default called mindfulness. And the only way we're going to practice it is get the mindfulness muscle stronger. So when you're brushing your teeth, just be mindful, fully in the present moment with the here and now. Now, whether you're looking at your mouth in the mirror or you got your eyes closed and you're feeling the toothbrush on your gums or whatever, just be in the present moment. That's it. That's as far as I know. That's it.
There's a lot of bubbles in the sink, I noticed. Well, I don't always notice it, but then when you really look at the bubbles, there's a lot of bubbles. Like almost millions of bubbles in there.
Yep.
Okay, that's it. I'll let someone else go. Thank you, Leigh.
You're welcome.
Hello. I have a prepared question, but I dropped it. So I'm going on a month-long retreat at the Forest Refuge in August. Thankfully, there's no description of the retreat. I just know the two teachers, who the two teachers are. I have no idea of what their attitude is towards jhana experiences.
So who are the teachers? I may know.
Annie Nugent is one.
Okay, Annie was a student of Ayakema's, and that's where I first met her, was on retreat with Ayakema. But Annie doesn't teach jhanas, and she's not particularly jhana friendly, so you're not going to get much help there. She's a good teacher, though.
Yeah, I met her. I liked her a lot. So will I get hostility or resistance? Hostility is too long. Will I get resistance if I have what I consider jhana experiences and report them?
I don't know if you will get any valuable information. Who's the other teacher?
Her name escapes me. Josh, do you remember? Caroline Jones.
Yeah, she doesn't know much about jhanas either, as far as I know. So yeah, you're not going to get much support on the jhanas there. You'll be pretty much on your own. You'll have lots of wonderful time to play with it, but yeah,
I actually don't count on teachers much. I more rely on the infrastructure, on the environment. Yeah.
right. Yeah, well, I would go when Joseph Goldstein was there. And yes, he was good, but I went a lot of times when he wasn't there because he wasn't there all that much. And yeah, I went to meditate in the environment and I would go to the teachers and use the interviews as basically a reminder in which direction consensual reality lay so that I didn't wander off too far.
Okay, so now that you've answered that so quickly, I'll go to my other question, and that is, I was looking at how do you suggest I use these advanced or AI to help with my Dharma studies? Would you have any suggestions? Specifically, is there a way to access your site, which is very rich, and feed it into the AI machine?
If you want to scrape my site and feed it into AI, that would be great. Okay, the AI might get a little smarter, but I am not impressed with AI these days. I mean, yeah, it's fairly good at some things, but you get anything advanced, it has no idea what it's talking about. So when it first started, I asked it about the jhanas, and it would feed back stuff from what I'm teaching and also what students of POWOK are teaching, which is two different systems. And it would try and merge them together into one thing, which if anybody tried to practice was going to cause nothing but confusion. It knows where it can find a lot of information about a topic, but it doesn't know what information is necessarily relevant to the topic given the question asked. Now, I asked it, who were some good teachers of jhanas? And it listed, myself and the POWOK teachers and a few other people that, yeah, were good teachers. I asked it for resources. It pointed to my book. It pointed to POWOK's book, but it never, ever cottoned on to the fact that what's taught in the Visuddhimagga is a completely different system than what I'm teaching. Mine is based strictly on the suttas. Visuddhimagga is based on almost 1,000 years later commentary. So I'm not that impressed with AI. I'm impressed with its ability to make images. You want a cat riding on top of a spaceship wearing a cowboy hat? Sure, it'll crank that out right away. But as far as knowledge that's useful, I haven't found AI to be that helpful. So I plug something into Google and I find the AI is really helpful if what I plugged in, I'm actually trying to get the correct spelling of, because it'll come up in the AI and I can copy and paste it into my email or whatever I'm writing. So the AI is useful that way. Or I'm looking for, um, you know, like a number. How many people were at the Second Continental Congress when they signed the Declaration of Independence? Yeah, that's facts. It can go and give me that number of how many people there were. Or what was the day of the week of July the 4th, 1776? It's Thursday, by the way. It knows that. Uh, But when I
No,
ask it something like about the jhanas or anything else that I know a lot about, uh, yeah, I'm not impressed. I ask it, does Leigh Brasington know anything about computers? And it says, as far as we can tell, Leigh Brasington knows nothing about computers. I was a software engineer for 35 years. My resume is on my website. So I would say ignore AI. It's not really good enough yet to be a shortcut to anything.
okay, but I will scrape your site.
Thank you.
Right.
Hey, Lee. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
My pleasure.
My question is about something you alluded to in the fifth and the sixth jhanas. I believe you said in the fifth, there's a subtle separation between the sense of self and the sense of infinite space, and then that sense of identification shifts in the sixth to a subtle sense of identification with the sense of infinite consciousness itself. I'm wondering if you could speak at further length about how the gradient of self changes across the different jhanas. Are there further changes in the seventh and eighth, and are there changes in the first to the fourth?
Yeah. So in the first, you probably wouldn't notice a sense of self because it's so intense, right? It's there, but it's overridden by the experience. Unless, of course, the experience freaks you out. And then it's, I've got to get out of here. This is too much, or something like that. And yeah, people do find that the onset of the first jhana is pretty out of control feeling because, well, it's out of control. You have to let go into it. So you probably wouldn't notice much of a sense of self in the first. Second, third, and fourth, there is a sense of an observer of the experience, and it gets a little more subtle as the numbers go up. I wouldn't say it's dramatic, but the difference between the sense of self in 2 and 4, it's noticeable, with 3 being in the middle there. Once you get to 5, the sense of self is much less. It's been reduced quite a bit. In fact, you may not notice that there's a point of observation, which is about all that's left of the sense of self. You may not notice that for the first multiple times you're in there. It's just, wow. It's like you walk up to the edge of the Grand Canyon. You don't think, wow, I'm standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. You think, wow, that's a big hole, right? You're not referencing yourself back. In 6, the sense of self is about as strong as in 5, only the sense of self it's my consciousness, as opposed to I'm observing something apart from myself. For in 5, there's me and all that space out there. In 6, there's my consciousness is that big. In 7, it's more back like 5. There's a smaller sense of self now than 5, but there's nothing out in front and behind and everything else when it gets really good. So the sense of self has shrunk more. And in 8, you won't notice a sense of self while you're in it. If you notice a sense of self, you just fell out of it. Because in 8, there is only, this is not describable, but it sustains. But if it's, I can't describe this, then it's fading away. Or I can sustain it, it's fading away. It's just, this is indescribable, but it sustains. And it's only in retrospect do you get a sense of self on it. So it's basically shrinking, but the big shrink is between 4 and 5, and then between 7 and 8.
Okay, and it's a bit of an increase, it seems, from like 6 to 7. Is that
I
correct?
wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's an increase. I would say it's a new point of identification. It's about the same strength in 5 as it is in 6. Okay. And so you've identified not in front of me, but me as the consciousness. And when you shift to 7, the strength of the self decreases a little bit more.
All righty. Thank you, Leigh.
You're welcome. Right.
Hi, Leigh.
Hi.
Also, thank you for taking the time to be with us here. So I have a question. It's a little tricky because I can't really say I'm speaking from experience so much, but I feel like I've heard my teacher and other teachers talk about the higher states of the jhanas in similar or other words, but the way there, they wouldn't, like the way doesn't focus on these more pleasant states that you were describing and staying in them and then moving to the next one. So is the point to get there in a more consistent way, reliable way, or maybe to have a roadmap there? Is that?
Yeah. What I'm trying to teach people is how to get there in a reliable, consistent manner by providing them a roadmap of these 8 states and how to move from one to the other.
Mhm.
The purpose of it all, though, is for you to come out and do your insight practice with a jonically concentrated mind. And so this is the roadmap to get the jonically concentrated mind. Yeah.
So this is one roadmap, which is not to say there aren't other ways, which may be more of a detour or I don't know, or less.
Well, okay. So the only people who agree about exactly what constitutes which jhana are people who studied with the same teacher. Okay. There is no agreement out there. If you talk to somebody else who teaches jhanas, they may sort of agree with me. Rob Burbea is kind of famous. He's a British Dharma teacher who unfortunately died a few years ago, but brilliant guy. He and I are fairly close, but not quite. Thanissaro Bhikkhu, Tanjef, we're fairly close, but not quite. Those two are closer because Rob was Tanjef's student. Uh, you talk to people who studied with Bhante Vimalaramsi, and I'm going, he's teaching 8 different states than what I'm teaching. It's not even, I wouldn't even call it jhana, but yeah. You talk to people that are studying with Powok, and it's 8 different states from what I'm teaching. I wouldn't call them jhanas. I would call them Sudhimagga jhanas. In fact, I have identified 46 states that go by the name jhana. And even if you take a subset, like the 4 found in the suttas, amongst various teachers teaching them, you'll find a range of what they think actually constitutes enough concentration to call it jhana. Um, some some teachers want more concentration, some want less, but pretty much you can be sure that any teacher will tell you that if someone is engaging in less concentration than what they're teaching, it's not the real jhanas. And if they're engaging in more concentration than what they are teaching, it's just indulgence and it's not the real jhanas. And it doesn't matter where on the spectrum of concentration it lies, all the teachers are saying the same thing. Everybody is quite certain that what they have is the right ones, and everybody else is wrong. Sound familiar?
Yes. So one, I think, short question. At some stage, would the body sensations drop away?
When you enter the 5th jhana and higher, it says, and by passing entirely beyond all bodily sensations. So you're just not aware of the body. Now, if you're in the 5th jhana and you check to see, can I feel my body? You'll feel your body. Okay. But you're just not noticing it. Like right now, you're probably not noticing the pressure on your left foot until I actually said pressure on your left foot. It was there all along. You just weren't noticing it. Your body will be there all along in 5th through 8th jhana, but you won't notice it because you're so focused on these very subtle states.
So when you become aware of it, would that mean you're back to 4th or lower?
No, it just means you're wobbling.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So you're in 5th jhana and there's just space and you become aware of your body and you're wobbling. And if you're not careful, you'll fall right out. Okay. But you're wobbling a little bit. Yeah. Get back to the space. Forget it. Yeah. Back to the space now and we forget about it. Most of the jhanas, you can get in them and wobble a little bit and then reestablish. But you get in long enough and wobble and yeah, it's gone.
But regardless of that, can focusing on body sensations be a path?
Oh yeah. It's a very good path to access concentration. Mystical Anka made body scan, sweeping, well known in the West. Actually, I learned it from Aya Kema. She was a student of Robert Hover, who was a student of U Ba Khin, Goenka's teacher. And I also studied with Ruth Dennison, who studied with U Ba Khin. And so for the first 3 years of my life, my primary practice was body scan. And when I finished the scan, go to my breath. I couldn't follow my breath when I started. It was too boring. Okay, but then I could, after doing a body scan, take 40 minutes to go through my whole body and then come to my breath for the last 20. And that worked really well. So when I went on my second retreat where they were teaching only breath, I fell into the first jhana on the fourth day. I had enough background, from doing the body scan that I could follow the breath and actually stumbled into the first jhana. I didn't know it was the first jhana. I knew I liked it, but I didn't know what it was for 2 years.
I don't want to take too many, I don't know. So what do you think about body scan, breath, and then sort of open awareness? Which
Yeah.
sometimes I find open awareness tricky because I feel like I do get wobbly in that.
Yeah.
But as a question.
I don't do an open awareness practice hardly ever unless I've gotten concentrated first.
Right.
It becomes open distraction as opposed to open awareness.
Mhm.
And I want my mind to have gotten settled down before I try and do something like that.
Right. Makes sense.
So,
Okay.
the fellow mentioned standing in line at the grocery store, stepping into it. Yeah, I'll do that. But that's like, okay, I've got time to kill here. I can read a People magazine or I can just step into open awareness. I think the stepping into open awareness, even if it's kind of distracted, it's going to be more valuable than a People magazine.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You have time for a really quick one? Okay, Leigh, tell me what you think about this. Just real quick. The ninefold path. The ninth one is right laughter.
Okay, somehow we lost the camera. I
Oh.
don't know the ninefold. I don't know the ninefold path.
Okay, the ninth. No, I'm proposing the ninefold path. I don't know if I did that. I don't think I did. Sorry. Okay, let's one more time.
Right.
I'm proposing to you the ninefold path, and the ninth one is right laughter, and that's
Yeah,
not
well,
supposed to be a joke. So
yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, definitely. I mean, unless you know Pali really well, you miss out on all the puns in the suttas because we're reading them in English translation. Unless there's a footnote where the translator tells you about the puns, the the Buddha was an incredible punster. So yeah, humor's there. So yeah, Wes Nisker. Do you know Wes Nisker? He had some books out. He was the news director for the number one rock and roll music station in San Francisco during the Summer of Love. And he was a Dharma teacher. He passed away a year or two ago, but he has a number of books out. And he is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And he taught using his humor. It was brilliant. And his tagline was, if you don't like the news, go out and make some of your own. I think that's appropriate for today, given current news. So yeah, check out Wes Nisker. The other person to check out is Bob Thurman. He's a Tibetan teacher, Uma Thurman's daddy, and he's outrageously hilarious. Both of those are really brilliant teachers, and they use humor in their teaching. If you can find videos of them, that would be even better than their books. Their books are good, but seeing a video of them, I think, plug them into YouTube. Everything is on YouTube.
Anybody else want to ask anything?
Well, you don't want to talk to your teacher. Okay, Lee, I think that exhausts all of our questions.
Okay.
So thank you again. Very, very grateful for taking the time for us. I'll mention again for us here and anyone else watching the recording, your website, Leigh, leighb.com for, I presume your retreat schedule's up there?
Yeah.
And your books and option for Donna on there. So
I want to say a thing about the Dana.
Yeah.
Instead of giving Dana to me, if you feel the urge to give some Dana, give it to some organization that you feel is making the world a better place. Okay? You know, you don't need to give me whatever. Give that money to some organization, I don't know, Doctors Without Borders or, you know, a retreat center, you know, rather than to me. I was a computer programmer. I'm doing okay. As long as the Republicans don't steal my Social Security, I'm set. And even if they do, I'll be all right. But yeah, find somebody that's making the world a better place and give your Dana that way. That's going to be an even more auspicious thing to do.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Lee. We're going to go sit now. So thanks for the
All right.
inspiration.
Well, may any merit from this sharing of the Dharma be for the benefit and liberation of all beings everywhere. Enjoy your meditation.
Have a great day, Lee.
You too. Bye.